Maybe on my phone.
Right.
While she's in something, an appointment or something.
Right.
We're going to bring tonight's meeting of the Centreville Town Council to order. And we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and if folks could remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll begin the meeting with a review of minutes from past meetings. Anybody have any amendments or changes to the minutes from the last meeting? If not, I'll take a motion to accept.
Make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from last meeting.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I have a closed session announcement regarding closed session. We just gavelled adjourned. The Town Council met in closed session on Thursday, October 21st, 2021 at 6:00 p.m. at the Liberty Building, 107 North Liberty Street, second floor meeting room to discuss personnel and land acquisition in accordance with the Maryland Open Meetings Act. Four members of the Town Council voted to close the session. The authority to close the session is found in Section 3-305 of the General Provisions Article. The Town Council discussed the following topics: personnel. We discussed compensation of employees, and land acquisition. We discussed potential land acquisition. There were no actions taken. The following members and staff were present: Stephen K. Klein, President; Jeffrey D. Keel, Vice President; Shelby Anania; Eric B. Johnson, Jr., and Ashley H. Kaiser, members; Steve Walls, Town Manager; Charles Chip Kugel, Interim Town Manager; and Crystal Ebal, Human Resources Manager; and Sharon Van Emberg, Town Attorney, were present for a portion of the meeting. The meeting adjourned at 6:46 p.m.
Could I ask you to just amend that Shelby was via phone?
Via phone,
We
sure.
did not have that in the typed up version.
Sure. Councilmember Anania was present via phone. Thank you very much. We will move now into our public hearings. We're going to start with Ordinance 12-2021. The subject of this hearing is Ordinance 12-2021 for the purpose of amending the town's zoning ordinance codified as Chapter 170 of the Town Code to allow the planned unit development district as an overlay zoning district in the traditional neighborhood district, to amend the traditional neighborhood district provisions and all regulations that accompany in order to administer and enforce the town's zoning ordinance more effectively. Ms. Van Emberg will now provide background on Ordinance 12-2021.
So I think Mr. Jakubiak at some point is going to go through more of the specifics of the change in the actual text. But just as general background, this is a request that was generated by a property owner for a specific project, but it is changes to the zoning ordinance that are generally applicable throughout town for similarly situated property. So it is not just for one project. It would apply anywhere that would also have the same zoning in town. The changes are to the planned unit development district sections and the traditional neighborhood district sections of the zoning ordinance, and there's also a few definitions that are being revised. The Planning Commission has considered this and made a favorable recommendation. So.
I will now call upon, thank you. I will now call upon Carolyn Brinkley, Town Clerk, to present evidence of the published notice of this hearing.
Certificate of Publication, State of Maryland, County of Queen Anne's. This is to certify that the annex legal advertisement has been published in the publications in the October 1st, 2021 Record Observer.
We will first hear from all those in favor of proposed Ordinance 12-2021, and then hear from those opposed. Please keep all comments to 3 minutes. You are welcome to provide written testimony to the Town Council as well. And Carolyn will read the public comment guidelines for us.
Welcome to this meeting of the Centreville Town Council. This is a public meeting and we welcome your participation. By attending, you acknowledge that this session is recorded and aired live on QACTV 7. During the meeting, we ask that you turn your cell phones off and hold personal conversations outside the meeting room. The scheduled agenda is available on the information table just outside. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person. The Town Council respects and appreciates your desire and right to convey your message freely, and in keeping with the dignity of proceedings, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. If questions are a part of your comments, we'll refer those to the appropriate individual. Thank you.
We're going to turn it over to Mr. Jakubiec for his comments, and then we'll open it up for public comment after that. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thank you. So this ordinance to the zoning ordinance that would amend the zoning ordinance focuses on two parts of the zoning document. It focuses on the planned unit development section and on the TND, or traditional neighborhood design section. And we're going to use these terms PUD and TND quite a bit tonight, I'm sure. PUD is a planned unit development. It's a zoning approach or development approach that grants the applicant, the developer, far more flexibility than the ordinance typically provides a landowner. And that flexibility is expected to be used to generate something of greater value than you might find in a typical subdivision, so that certain attributes of the development would be more appealing or beneficial to the community at large. For instance, there might be flexibility in the arrangement of open spaces, or flexibility so that lot sizes can vary, so that a variety of housing styles can be permitted to mix, create a diversity of housing within a larger development. So PUD is not your typical zoning district. It's not an R1 district. It's not an R2 or R3. It's a way of modifying the development that is typically allowed in R1, R2, or R3. Okay, that's what the zoning ordinance is today. That exists. The PUD has long been in the town zoning ordinance. What is being changed tonight is that, or what is being proposed to be changed here is that the PUD process would now apply to the TND zone. Again, allowing the TND zone modifications so that someone developing on property zone TND can likewise have flexibility to create something of greater value than may be typically associated with the TND project. There is one property zone TND in the town of Centreville, and that's the Carter Farm on Chesterfield Avenue. I think we all know that parcel. So this provision would allow for modifications to the TND district on that property. Over time, other properties may be zoned TND. The zoning map can be modified. There's a process for that. And when other properties become TND, they likewise can make use of this PUD process. Okay. Now, let me turn slightly to the discussion of TND, which is the current zoning of the Carter Farm. TND itself is a very innovative type of zoning district. It allows for much smaller lot sizes. It actually encourages mixing lot sizes together. It encourages a very traditional, hence traditional neighborhood development, very traditional type of pattern. It really seeks to recreate the environment that you have in other places of town, the historic parts of town, that are sometimes difficult to replicate under current standards, like the R1 standard, where every lot has to have 12,000 square feet, or whatever the case may be. You sort of end up with a more cookie-cutter approach to subdivision design. So TND tries to replicate old ways of developing: sidewalks, narrow blocks, houses close together, but we have an applicant who's come to the town with a proposal that doesn't match up necessarily with the TND. It certainly doesn't square with the R1, R2, R3 districts. But we have the PUD process that allows for modifications. So the proposal for you tonight would apply the PUD to that TND zone, allowing a developer flexibility the flexibility they already have in TND, but greater flexibility. And it's some of the, I won't get into the specifics, but one of the purpose statements of the PUD is proposed to be amended. And I wanted to highlight that to you because it's the most relevant part of the purpose statement. And it's on the first page of your 170-28A Plan Unit Development District. It's letter E, A1E. It's an added purpose statement. It's saying the purpose is, among other things, to encourage significant innovations in the development of land to bring about sustainable patterns of development in environmentally sensitive areas, including within the critical area. So what we have seen already, and we've not seen in any formal sense, the Planning Commission has not taken up a formal review of any concept plan, but we have seen a concept plan. A plan for housing and open space and kind of a small agricultural component and a little mix of commercial uses. That takes or capitalizes on the flexibility created by these zoning changes. But if you've seen that plan is not before you tonight. There are many ways of designing any property that's zoned TND to be in compliance with these regulations. The concept plan you see now may be what the developer wants, but at the end of the day, it's going to go through a series of approval processes that grant you and the Planning Commission discretionary authority to apply these standards. So you don't have to accept what you see. You may find great value in it and do that, and that's perfectly fine. You're allowed to do that, but you will apply these standards as the decision makers. And the PUD process is different than the other zones in that the authority rests with you at the end of the day, because you're effectively changing the standards. You're changing the legislation to apply to that particular property. Okay? So you have discretion, you have authority, you can reject, you can change, you can modify, you can send comments back to the Planning Commission, they can send comments to you. But at the end of the day, you will have to approve a plan unit development, and only then can the Planning Commission approve the final plats and all the legal documents that attend to a development project. That's a summary.
All right.
I didn't get
Thank you
into
very
much of the specifics, but
Well, if I could, and we'll certainly allow council to ask any questions they want and take as much time as we need for this to get it right. In your opinion, what are sort of some of the bigger ticket changes that are seeking to be made with this ordinance?
yeah. In the plan unit development section, if you turn to, these pages are not numbered, so I'm just going to find the section. It would be subsection D, 170-29D.
Amendments to approved PUD applications?
Yes, that's it. These are all new. And actually, these don't come about because the applicant was advocating for them. These come about because the town attorney and myself were thinking, we don't have amendment procedures. We probably should have them because ultimately these things could become amended and there ought to be a process. So this set of amendment procedures is tested. It's actually modeled on the procedures set forth in the zoning ordinance in the town of Easton in Talbot County, and it works in my view. So it has the zoning administrator making a determination about what is material and what changes immaterial. Material changes have to go to the Planning Commission for a cycle of improvements. Non-material changes can be made administratively, like many zoning decisions are currently. So I think that's a very substantive change procedurally to this document. Now,
But one, as you said, suggested by town staff.
yes, that's right. That's right. Now, there's another change that I think is substantive and significant, and that is in section 170-28B, number 7, open space. So the way the PUD regulations read now, common open space shall comprise not less than 25% of the gross area of a tract of land, if it's R1. And 25% has to be set aside in open space. And of that 25%, 70% of it has to be active, ball field, playground equipment, things like that, as opposed to passive, forest or community garden. What is being changed with this particular provision is that common open space shall comprise not less than 25% of the gross area, except in the TND district, where the required open space and recreational provisions applicable to TND districts shall be applied. So it's saying, yeah, PUD is relevant, but when it comes to TND, look to the TND regulations for your open space guidance. And then it goes on to say, those lands designated as an integral part of the PUD in an underlying TND district, even if used for agriculture and not available for use by the public, shall be considered common open space, provided other open space areas are reasonably distributed throughout the community. Now you think about this project and the vision that the developers have. They have a proposal for about 5 acres of active farmland, cultivation of land for crops, and then perhaps selling them, and some small-scale manufacturing of food, flowers, honey, things like that on site. That's a significant amount of open space within a development of 40 acres, not to mention the buffer that cannot be developed that would be preserved perpetually. So because with this flexibility, a developer can develop a concept set around an active farm parcel, essentially. It would be almost impossible to do something like that without this type of standard. So that's what it does. And again, this is discretionary. The Planning Commission will judge whether the open space is provided in a way that's distributed fairly and reasonably,
If I could, going back to the very first section, 170-28A, the very first page here. I just noticed number 2 and 3 under section A, in R1 or R2 districts, it says the council shall follow the procedures set forth in this section for the approval. But for R3 and TND, it shall be permitted. So there's, why is that? Why are those two treated differently than R1 and R2 in your view?
The PUD shall be permitted in the R3 zone and TND zone in accordance with the conditional requirements contained in this section.
It's just it seems like it's a different way of treating R3 and TND in my reading of it.
Yeah, well, this section of the code sets forth the approval process, and it says it shall be followed. Here it says it shall be permitted in accordance with the same process. I think it's probably an inartful way of structuring this. They probably should have agreed consistently.
Okay.
What is good for one is good for the other. And I don't think the intent was to imply that one has an easier path than the other.
And then just real quick, before I wrap and turn it over to others, the very next subsection G, applicable only to PUDs in the R1, R2, or R3 districts. In planned unit developments, commercial establishments of a convenience and service nature for PUD residents may be permitted. The bolded new is this subsection is not intended to apply or in any way limit commercial uses and development in PUDs located within the TND. It's the clause before it is not a limiting clause. So why the addition necessary there?
The TND has its own set of standards for commercial development and the amount of commercial development and the types of uses. So the intent here is to basically say those standards are applicable. These are not intended to apply. It was a way to kind of keep the integrity of this section in place, but deal with the complexity that we're dealing with two different sets of standards.
Okay.
And I think the limiting part that it's referring to is that the commercial for the R1, R2, and R3 has to be for basically the convenience of the PUD residents only. And when we did it for the TND, that's expanded a little bit. It has to be for those, for their benefit, but it's also, it can be a little bit broader than that.
I got you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Counsel?
If you don't mind, I'll jump in. I have a memo too that I distributed to the other council members, and I can send you a copy of this, but I can kind of go in order. Some of what I have is just cosmetic, but under the signature page, whereas, and it just says Town Centreville, that should be Town of Centreville. Again, that's more cosmetic, but moving to more substantive. And I think this is more the preference of this particular agency. Under section 170-28, PUD district regulations, section 8, sanitary facilities. It reads, satisfactory evidence must be furnished to the town council that the existing town sewer and water systems can handle the increased demands placed upon them by the proposed PUD and meet current health department requirements for standards of operation. And I'm just suggesting that we say County Department of Health, and then just noting some history with the Department of the Environment that we add, and Maryland Department of the Environment. That's just my suggestion, subject to the rest of the council's take on that. And then section 170-28, same document. Section 11, administrative procedures, subsection B, 3B, the North Point scale and date, and then further subsections I and the double I there, 1 and 2, just to reverse the order of those, so they're ascending. So what's listed is 1 right now for projects containing more than 10 acres but less than 50 acres, not more than 50 to 1 inch. And then was followed by 2 for projects containing 10 acres or less, not more than 20 feet to 1 inch, just reversing those. And then I just think this next one, it makes more sense as I read it under section, and we're not on 29 yet, so I can wait. Or are we? 170-29. Oh, yes, sorry. This would be 170-29.1, Traditional Neighborhood Development District, Section G, Design Requirements, 5, Parking, and then further subsection D. It says the maximum number of parking spaces provided shall not exceed the minimum number required by more than 10%, and I just feel like it reads better if you say provided shall not exceed 110% of the minimum number required. And again, I'll send this to you, it'll be easier to see. And then it just looks like, unless I'm reading it wrong and don't understand it, there's some duplicate text. Section 170-29.1, Section H, Architectural Standards. Thank you, Carolyn, that's very helpful. And then G, design requirements, 2 residential garages, further subsection B. To me, when I'm reading these, the first one there is the same as the fourth. Unless I'm reading it wrong. So the first one, detached rear garage access. So when I think rear garage, that's assumed behind the house. Is that correct or no?
Yes, it is.
So can we we'll just strike that. And then probably more substantive depending on what might be incomplete. Same section, subsection H, architectural standards, open space and recreation, 2, area required, and then subsection A. That last sentence there, it looks like it's cut off, so I didn't know if there was something further that was supposed to be there that you could speak to, or if that's something we need to research.
Can you direct me again to where that is? I don't know if it's on this page.
The last one, number 6.
The last
Number 6,
bullet.
okay.
Says last sentence incomplete.
70.
And I'm looking for that too.
Yeah, it just says and similar, and then there's no carryover punctuation of any kind.
I just want to make sure there wasn't anything substantive there that,
That would cut off. I think there was, but
those are my comments. I think in general, it makes sense, the way it's laid out. It's very clear.
Any other questions before we?
Yeah, sorry, to go back, I'm really sorry, you gotta go back in your packet though, to 170-28B, the PUD requirements. That wording that Council President brought up just is really weird, and I struggle to understand what it's trying to get at. So where it says, this subsection is intended to not limit commercial uses in development in PUDs located within the TND district. Is that trying to say for PUDs located within the TND requirement should apply? Because that, to me, says what it's supposed to say instead of this, like, double negative situation we have going on in here.
yeah, yeah.
I just want to make sure that a layperson could understand what would be allowed.
Yeah, and I think the planning commission played with that language, and they changed it to that, and maybe it made it more confusing.
Yeah, we went, the same standard, we spent a lot of time on it, I don't think we've gotten it right yet. We wanted to differentiate, we wanted to make 2 points, I think, with this. One was that commercial is different in a PUD that's set over an R1 zone. That commercial is meant to be for the residents. So maybe there's a dry cleaner at the main entryway into the large subdivision. It's, serving the residents. Here, the commercial is meant to be for that too, but also for the general public on some level. So, and then the other point was just really say that TND regulations have commercial standards. So we can get back and put our heads together and
I
see if
think
we
it
come
could
up
be a
with
little
better
less
language.
confusing.
Yeah, okay, fair point.
That's all I've got.
Any other questions from council? All right, we will now hear from all, thank you, Chris.
Sure, you're welcome.
We will now hear from all those in favor of proposed ordinance 12-2021. By all means, come on up and share your name and home location.
Hi, my name's Sandy Huffer. My residence at 200 Corsica Street, and I've owned that residence for 20 years. And prior to that, I lived in Centreville during my childhood. I lived here through elementary school to high school, so I'm very familiar with Centreville. I'm here tonight to support both of these amendments for Ordinance 12-2021, PUD TND. I think it creates more of a creative approach to the development of the TND zoned areas, and it's really changing, it's responding to the market conditions that's happening in the state of Maryland as well as the country, and just the shifting in lifestyles that's happening right now. And I think it gives an adequate amount of time, as was discussed earlier, relating to both the Planning Commission and the residents to review anything that comes, that comes into this, as growth is happening in Centreville. So I think it respects that and does that as well, which is very important. Ordinance 13-2021, this provides for Wooners or living streets. That's promoting more walkability, and it's actually, for active lifestyles, and it's allowing more, it favors pedestrians versus cars, which I think is very important. So it creates a more safer environment for non-motorized users, which I think is important. I know the council, for public safety is very important. So I think it, it actually, is very complimentary of that. And the approach is really one that's been extensive, again, through the country. This isn't kind of cutting edge. It's something that's already happening in the country. And it is one that actually is being adapted by existing streets, in communities throughout. So here just to support both amendments.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Signed up on some
Yeah,
form somewhere,
yeah.
but don't worry about it.
I can take you off that form.
Okay, all right, I appreciate it. To be taken off any form is always good. First of all, congratulations to Eric and Ashley. It's good to see even more
Queen Anne's County High School influence up here, so I like to see that. My name is Elaine McNeil. I'm a just retired from Queen Anne's County High School teacher, and my home is 402 Chesterfield Avenue, which is I guess from this way, it's the first house that's adjacent to the Carter Farm. But my next door neighbor is adjacent to the Board of Ed, so they have the lacrosse field behind them, whereas we have the field, the Carter Farm, which we'll continue to call the Carter Farm forever, as you know, in Centreville, we'll always call it that. And I'm here to support the flexibility that's cast by these two amendments, as soon as you fix all the language. But because it does create the opportunity for the traditional village, I think, to grow, and I think that's kind of, we think of our town as a little village with a lot of different little neighborhoods, and the possibilities are good, and it's being done in a smart way by continuing the things with this amendment. I also want to say the word Wunuf, because everybody's saying Wunuf now, and I should have called one of my children Wunuf, apparently, but anyway, but Wunuf as a cool thing, and also we'll be happy to have that now in our back section there. And because the neighborhood and interaction between the neighbors is kind of what we like about why we're residents of, we've been in Centreville for 42 years. I came here as a young person, look at me now. But and we moved back into town because of the walkability. And so many people, that's what we talk about, is the walkability. And I think this is encouraging all that kind of stuff. And that's what we'd like to see. So, and you're here to protect us against anything that might not happen, we might not want to happen. So these amendments, I think, are good. So I appreciate it. And all of you for serving, of course. That is such a big thing to do, especially to run for election and work for government. Tough thing to do these days. So anyway, it's appreciated.
Thank you, Elaine.
All right.
Thank you. Any other public comment in support of the ordinance?
I do have my mask.
We will now hear from all those opposing proposed ordinance 12-2021. All right, seeing no one. The Centreville Town Council will consider all comments presented this evening before making a final decision regarding proposed ordinance 12-2021. Do I hear a motion to adjourn this hearing?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I now declare this hearing adjourned. All right. The subject, we'll move into ordinance -13, 2021. The subject of this hearing is ordinance 13-2021 for the purpose of the town's subdivision regulations codified as chapter 138 to include provisions regulating WUNRFs, to revise the sidewalk standards, to allow the Planning Commission to grant flexibility in the general street standards for planned unit development projects and all regulations that accompany in order to administer and enforce the town's subdivision regulations more effectively. Ms. Van Emberg will now provide background on ordinance 13-2021.
So these two ordinances really work in tandem. The previous one we just talked about was changes to the zoning ordinance, and this is changes to the subdivision regs. So this is where the actual WUNRF would be created as a street section standard, and then it gets implemented in the zoning ordinance as well. So there's a lot fewer changes, which I think Mr. Jakubiak is going to go through in more detail, but the Planning Commission also did consider this, and they recommend approval of this as well.
Before we have Carolyn read the evidence of the published notice, I think it makes sense to let you go ahead and give your background at that point.
Okay, good. So these are the subdivision regulations that are proposed to be amended. And before we discuss this quirky little street called WUNRF, I wanted to mention 138-39C. For plan unit development projects, the Planning Commission may approve alternative subdivision improvement standards for the general street standards in 138-17. Now, important thing, this means that for any plan unit development, if it's an R1, R2, it's not just something that's relevant to this particular Carter Farm project or to a TND type of arrangement. This means that within any planned unit development, a degree of flexibility can be applied in terms of the layout and the standard design for streets.
Chris, the microphone.
So the standard creates a flexibility for how the street standards are applied within a planned unit development. And I just want to go to that section to highlight what it is that the current language says. Okay, it's called General Street Standards. And these are general. These are not specific engineering standards. These are general, almost policy standards. For instance, residential streets shall be so laid out that their use by through traffic will be encouraged. Okay, you think about that, but you apply a planned unit development concept. You may have a street that goes off to an end, and it's better to end it up there in a little cul-de-sac rather than to create a through movement through it. So that's the type of policy guidance that this standard would allow to be amended. Okay, and there are actually A through I. Alleys are prohibited in developments of single-family detached residences, which is actually directly in conflict with the TND regulations that we have. So this, again, within a planned unit development, you wouldn't have to follow that standard. The Planning Commission could set that aside. Okay. The second thing is the creation of a new type of street. First of all, it's a private street. The public is not going to own a WUNRF. There's no street section that you're going to see anywhere that would be publicly owned and maintained that's referred to as a WUNRF. This is only a private street section that's being proposed. The right-of-way, which is the area contained within the street, including the pavement and the grass strip along it, would be 20 feet wide, and the paving section would be 16 feet wide. If it is a one-way section, it could be as narrow as 12 feet wide, which is essentially equivalent to the width of an alley. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Of course, alleys can be two ways on 12. So it's just one way on 12 feet. Now, the concept here is not to allow this to be the primary way to get to property. It's clear when you look back at the other section that we discussed that WUNRFs are secondary. They're providing secondary access to property, okay? And only if, in the context of the planned unit development, can they be used in any other different way. But the intention is that WUNRFs are a secondary route to access. They can replace an alley. The most important design element of a WUNRF is that traffic moves very slowly, that it lives up to its Dutch name, meaning a livable street or living street. In other words, it could be a street where kids can play, people can walk, the car or the delivery truck, whatever it might be, is going to be moving pretty slow. It's not simply a paved surface. It's a surface that has landscaping that has texture treatment. You can think of cobblestones or some other type of change of texture to create a rough environment if you're traveling through it, as another way of slowing traffic down. Now, this has been used in European cities, not as new streets generally, but as conversion of existing streets. Of course, you know, in many European cities, the older cities, a 12-foot wide street is quite typical. I mean, you enjoy that environment. You're walking through these narrow little streets and lanes. But as, you know, we got into modern times, European cities developed broader streets, bigger streets. And then it began to realize that people drive too fast on them, and they lost the charm and the quality that they had in their inner cities where the streets are small and people walked. So they began putting these roads on a diet. They started making them skinnier and skinnier and skinnier, and they called them WUNRFs. So they became a retrofit of an existing street. And I don't know if America is unique in this, but certainly there are examples here in the United States of communities starting out with this, not retrofitting to get to this, but starting out with this as a standard in very unique residential settings, okay? I will say that you would likely be on a cutting edge if the town adopted this, because this is not something that is generally found in a municipal street code. It's something quite unique. So that's, and then the last page of this provides the definition of a WUNRF. And then there's a statement that basically says sidewalks are not required on WUNRFs, because ultimately the WUNRFs are designed to be walkable, primarily as a residential walkable street.
When, I just want to say, Centreville cutting edge, and here we are. Right? Never been called that before. What, just play out in your mind, you mentioned WUNRFs being private, secondary, tertiary streets. 35 years from now, 50 years from now, would you ever foresee pressure from communities for the public to take over those streets if they're not being maintained adequately? I mean, there's nothing, and then what would happen there if the private development couldn't maintain the WUNRF over time, you think?
Right.
Because we can't, I mean, according to these definitions, the town can't own the WUNRF.
Right.
We call it that.
Right. Well, it's a very important question. I mean, that's the policy question for you as the decision makers here, because we want to create sustainable communities, and most people think of sustainable communities as being environmentally sensitive, but we build sustainable communities because we follow standards that are relevant. They have the benefit of being tried and true over time, right? This is a departure, and it's going to require that the council feel comfortable with the protections that are adopted in conjunction with the plan unit development to create and capitalize a HOA, to ensure that an HOA has the wherewithal to finance maintenance of a road like this, right? And the infrastructure within it. The town is not going to approve a system of private roads and then agree to take maintenance responsibilities for the water and sewer pipes within them. Centreville may, but I suspect that's not going to be the case. So those types of private amenities become a significant cost that has to be built and maintained and taken care of. It's quite possible. It's that it can happen. WUNRFs are often found here in the United States, based on my research, outside of municipalities where municipal services aren't typically provided, right? So now we're in a municipality where services are provided, and they would be within this 20-foot right-of-way. So should the town have the authority to enforce a set of covenants within a HOA, like within a community like this? Probably, because if the roads aren't being maintained, or the water main is leaking, or the water lines are leaking, the town's going to turn the water off. Somebody's going to have to call the contractor and go out there and fix it. And MDE would support the town and say, it's not your responsibility, Centreville, it's up to them. So the town's going to have to make sure that its basic ethic of providing health and safety and quality of life is backed up with real legal documents and covenants, so that it can
For people on the council, not to interrupt, but for people on the council, where in the process would we insist on those covenants being, what point in this process? It's not here today.
Right. So these WUNRFs would come about through a plan unit development. So in the process of approving a plan unit development, those documents would be provided to the town attorney, who would certify that they were acceptable to you, and you would have the opportunity to deny the project based on, not finding them to be adequate. You certainly could do that. That's the discretion that has been created through these regulations. Sharon, am I basically
Yeah, it
right?
really could be a condition to a PUD, it could be a condition to the growth allocation, all of the above, part of a DRRA. I have a feeling that we're going to reference some of that in various places when the project actually starts coming through.
Great, thank you.
The communities do, of course, maintain private infrastructure, private roads.
Sure.
So it's not unheard of. I mean, this is standard practice in United States development. It's just an alternative to the public role.
But we don't have any private, permanently private roads in Centreville proper now, right? You might not know that off the top of your head.
Lindsay Drive.
Okay,
Yeah.
Lindsay Drive. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, you're
Any
welcome.
council have any questions for Chris on this one?
Yeah, just another wording question, I'm sorry. That 138-39 new where it says, may approve alternative subdivision improvement standards for the general street standards, that just reads really weird. And so if that for is meant to say instead of, or in lieu of, or in place of, could we do that? Because I think that's what it's trying to say, is that instead of using the general street standards, they can approve alternative standards.
Alternative to the, yeah.
Yeah,
I
that just, the use of for is weird.
think it stood out to me too when I read it over tonight. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, and this kind of piggybacks on what our council president said. Just the enduring concern, not a showstopper by any means, is, folks that live somewhere expect their town to take care of them. So, as you indicated, Sharon, as part of this process, just really reinforcing from the town's official standpoint that conversation with their residents is so important. We're going to get the calls anyway, why isn't the snow shoveled, et cetera, but just important to note publicly that that's an anticipated series of conversations.
Absolutely.
I'm sure.
And the council should rest assured that this would not pass muster with probably this board, with the staff, with the planning commission, if the fire marshal didn't sign off on it. They've got to verify that the road works for basic health and safety. If it didn't, it's a no-go. It's without a doubt. But those services, trash removal, it's all these other things that would have to be handled privately.
Thank you, Chris. All right, we'll now hear from all those in favor of proposed ordinance 13-2021.
Does Carolyn need to read that notice again?
She does. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I'm making changes on the fly. You can have a seat, though, by all means. I will now call upon Carolyn Brinkley, Town Clerk, to present evidence of the published notice of this hearing.
Certificate of Publication, State of Maryland, County of Queen Anne's. This is to certify that the annex legal advertisement has been published in the October 1st, 2021 Record Observer.
And since Carolyn read the public comment guidelines, we can dispense with those again and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Council. My name is Owen Bailey. I am the Town Projects Manager for the Eastern Shoreline Conservancy. My work is to create towns, or to help towns become more sustainable, walkable, and environmentally friendly. I'm here today to support Ordinance 12-2021. Wooners and shared streets are great designs for neighborhoods with low traffic volumes. They encourage compact communities that create healthier, happier living standards. The group AARP and their Livable Communities report from July 2015 notes that livable, more compact communities reduce automobile dependence and support a socially vibrant public realm. AARP calls walkable communities the livable economy. Wooners can make streets safer for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers, since travel speeds are lower. This makes accidents less common, and when accidents do occur, they are less severe and rarely fatal. They create places where people want to be and live, thus making them more popular and more valuable. According to the website WalkScore, an increase in 1 point in walkability can improve a value of a home by as much as $3,000. They are more financially productive as they encourage more walking and biking, which statistically shows to support more local businesses and the local economy. They are a better return on investment since properties are more walkable and neighborhoods are more valuable. Compact development requires less expenses per acre of tax base. According to Urban 3, a firm that reviews GIS data on tax revenue and tax dollars expenses, time and time again, compact, walkable, human-scale communities are better investments and more financially productive. They are better for the environment since there is less impervious surface, and since it encourages more walking, biking, and produces fewer car emissions. people living in more walkable neighborhoods are generally happier, healthier, both mentally and physically, which means they are more productive and they put less pressure on our healthcare system. AARP has done research that concludes that walking helps people with emotional distress and mental disorders. Walkable communities help residents with weight loss, reduce pain, reduce stress, improved sleep, reduce fatigue, and increase energy. Doctors are prescribing walking to their patients to help with cardiovascular diseases, osteoarthritis, various cancers, mental illness, and COPD. And the Maryland Department of Health supports walking initiatives to help with chronic diseases and prevention. That's why they are one of the active supporters in Maryland Department of Transportation's Walktober walkability advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else will support the ordinance?
President, thank you for your time this evening, members of the council. Ryan Showalter, I'm here today on behalf of Green Development, which is the applicant for both of these text amendments. And I just noticed a drafting error I wanted to highlight for you. If you look at the first line of the revisions, it's referenced to section 138-39, minimum standards modification. That actually is 138-15. So there's a typo. The first section that's proposed for amendment is 138-15, not 138-39. The second thing that I noticed, I think it's clear from the intent because it's not shown as a deletion, but section 138-39 has an amendment on the second page that includes the definition of lunar. 138-39 goes on in the text of your code, and it's not included here. So whether you want to add an ellipsis just to indicate that the rest of the text is not being omitted or deleted, it's not shown as a deletion. I think that's clear, but I just want to make sure the record indicates that there's no intent to delete the remaining provisions of 138-39. And I didn't comment before for the prior ordinance, but there was one question in the T&D section about subsection J, open space. There was a truncated sentence. Yes. I did pull up the town code, and just to save you time, that phrase included a list of potential open space and recreational areas. It ended with or biking trails, comma, and similar, without punctuation. The current code says similar civic/recreational uses, period. So there's no intent to omit that from the code. It was just a typo.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We will now hear from all those opposing proposed ordinance 13-2021. Hearing none, the Centreville Town Council will consider all comments presented this evening before making a final decision regarding proposed ordinance 13-2021. Do I hear a motion to adjourn this hearing?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I now declare this hearing adjourned. All right. Rolling through public hearings. The subject of this hearing is ordinance 14-2021 for the purpose of amending the town of Centreville fiscal year 2021 budget and all things related generally thereto. Ms. Luffman will now provide background on ordinance 14-2021.
All right, so in your packet, you'll just see the overall summary pages of the general fund and enterprise fund budget with the budget amendment changes inclusive in there. But I just wanted to let you know because the breakdown was provided in September before Eric and Ashley were here. So I was just going to give you the figures by department just so you. So we're amending A81, which is municipal buildings, by $8,523. The expense budget was over by that much in that department. C22, which is landfill, was over $2,201.00. And cemetery was over $16,687. So for a total of this budget amendment for general fund is $27,411. And when you look at opposing departments within the general fund, we were under budget about $300,000. So when you take account for that, we're still in the black. We weren't over. And the enterprise fund had one budget line amendment for the farm, and that was for $3,276. And in general, the enterprise fund was still under budget if you account for all departments. So those are the 4 departments for FY '21 that we're amending, and it will close out the fiscal year '21 budget for audit purposes.
C-22 again, can you tell me what that number was?
$2,201. And basically what that is the trash services.
Yep.
And what was the amount for the farm again?
$3,276.
Thank you.
I will now call upon Carolyn Brinkley, Town Clerk, to present evidence of the published notice of this hearing.
Certificate of Publication, State of Maryland, County of Queen Anne's. This is to certify that the annex legal advertisement has been published in the October 1st, 2021 Record Observer.
We will first hear from all those in favor of proposed ordinance 14-2021, and then hear from those opposed. Please keep all comments to 3 minutes. You are welcome to provide written testimony to the town council as well. Carolyn has already read the public comment guidelines, so we'll dispense with those. All those in favor of proposed ordinance, welcome to comment. All those opposed? The Centreville Town Council will consider all comments presented this evening before making a final decision regarding proposed ordinance 14-2021. Do I hear a motion to adjourn this hearing?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I now declare this hearing adjourned. All right. We'll now enter into citizens forum, and we can again dispense with public comment guidelines. We've heard those. Citizens are requested to keep their comments to 3 minutes, but now we open it up to general public comment. Annie Lane was signed up, but we're going to let her off the hook. Thank you. Appearances, I don't think we have any appearances this evening. We'll move into old business. 12-2021, I'll just read that real quickly, even though we just had a public hearing. An ordinance of the Town Council of Centreville to amend the town zoning ordinance codified as Chapter 170 of the Town Code to allow the planned unit development district as an overlay zoning district in the traditional neighborhood district, to amend the traditional neighborhood district provisions and all regulations that accompany in order to administer and enforce the town's zoning ordinance more effectively. I think I'd like to, because we have 2 brand-new members and all of us are fairly new, I think we're going to maybe have some consensus to vote on this at the November 4th meeting. If everybody could agree on that, and just to have time to look back through these things, avail yourself of town staff expertise and get further questions answered. Do we have consensus or?
Yes.
Yeah, I feel great about that, but can we get some of the language issues cleaned up, like see a new copy of it before then? Okay, cool.
Thank you. Ordinance 13-2021, an ordinance of the Town Council of Centreville to amend the town subdivision regulations codified as Chapter 138 to include provisions regulating WUNRFs, to revise the sidewalk standards to allow the Planning Commission to grant flexibility in the general street standards for planned unit development projects, and all regulations that accompany in order to administer and enforce the town's subdivision regulations more effectively. I am of the spirit to treat this the same, keep it on the November 4th agenda for a vote.
I agree.
Agreed.
And we'll see another copy of this, perhaps a cleaned up. I think there was at least one change that you had flagged, so we'll clean that up as well. And ordinance 14-2021, which I don't think I have a copy of. You want to read it? If you have it, go ahead.
This one, right?
Just read the top. Yeah.
Again, ordinance number 14-2021, an ordinance for the purpose of amending the Town of Centreville fiscal year 2021 budget and all things related generally thereto.
Is there a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Thank you. Parking meters, we wanted to cover that.
Chief has some information he'd like to share with the council.
Good evening.
Evening. I think it was probably 2 meetings ago, you may have received a memo from me regarding the current status of the parking meters. The memorandum was dated August 9th, 2021. And I'll just briefly go over this because I believe the last decision by council was to leave the meters bagged through the end of the year with some further discussion on the future of those meters. On September 13th, I conducted a physical examination and function test for each of the 73 coin-operated parking meters owned by the town of Centreville. Just to quickly go over the locations, in the town parking lot, there's a total of 12 coin-operated parking meters and 3 EV charging stations. All of the coin-operated meters were found to be operating correctly when tested. 3 of the 12 coin-operated parking meters at location require a minimum of 4 quarters to register, a minimum of 1 hour, and the remaining coin-operated meters allowed a minimum of 1 quarter for 30 minutes of parking. So that was kind of an anomaly parking meter that we have there. Lawyers Row, there's 24. 4 of them will require new internal components. 5 will require new meter display covers. In other words, even if you put your quarter in, you can't see how much time you have on there, whether it's expired. Broadway, there's 29 of them. 2 of the 29 are going to need new internal components. 1 needs a new meter display, and 6 parking meters are not currently used as the spaces are reserved for signs with the Department of Emergency Services. It's my understanding that they have recently moved back out to their headquarters on Safety Drive. So moving forward, we may be able to work to either leave those signs, change those signs, or put the meters back in service. Commerce Street, we have 8 meters. 1 will require new internal components, and the remaining 7 are operational. Our annual expense for the meters in 2018 was $392. In 2019, about $2,500 because 3 meter units were replaced. And in 2020, we spent about $300 to replace some of the components. There's a 2021 approximate cost to replace or repair meters. To replace the meter components at times 7, it would be about $3,300. To replace the meter covers, it would be about $18.36 a piece. And then each of those meter components that have to be replaced actually have to be reprogrammed, and that's right around $500. So a total estimate to fix everything as it stands right now is about close to $4,000. That is the state of the parking meters.
Who would do that work?
I think in the past, the police department has a Lieutenant Meal is kind of our resident expert with dismembering and reassembling parking meters, which is a bit labor intensive, obviously.
But that 4K is just parts, correct?
Correct.
Not labor. And I'm curious how much of these parts are potentially difficult to get now that so many towns have moved to the non-mechanical.
We did, Lieutenant Meal did a kind of a cursory research on that, and I think one of the issue that we have with the oddball parking meter in the town lot is the fact that that's actually a newer parking meter. So it goes without saying that the systems that we have in place right now are a bit antiquated, and these prices were, though fairly recent, I can't begin to guess on how practical it would be to actually acquire them and have them shipped and so forth, but that's certainly something that if council, that's the direction we want to go, then we'll make it happen.
Well, we're approaching the time of year when we normally bag the parking meters anyway. And so, my suggestion would be we keep them bagged through the end of the year and spend the next couple months thinking about other options.
Yes.
And one of the things, that concerns that pretty clearly come through that have come into the town is that there's not enough turnover. We have people parking there for, all day, which I do think we want to avoid. But at the same time, I don't think we want to have an officer spending time enforcing free parking rules. So one of the things that I've maybe thought about is is there a system that would allow us to give an hour of free parking to anybody that got parking validated by a business in town? And if you're staying beyond that hour, then you're paying. And if you don't have it validated by a business, then you would pay as well. So we got to think creatively here about how we get, make this work for everybody. But any other council have questions, thoughts about any of this?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I like what you're thinking. I think it's probably labor intensive on both the town and businesses to have some sort of parking validation system, but 1 free hour to anyone who parks there for any reason, and then you gotta pay, would probably get at the same thing with turnover and remove that, responsibility for a business to have to validate parking in some way.
Then we would have to let them know that the first hour is free, and then you'd have to pay, correct?
I mean, unless there's this could go any different directions. There's parking kiosks where, that could be positioned at these different locations that would indicate when a ticket's printed out, hey, your first hour's free, and then the rest is on you.
I think that's the route we should go, is the kiosks, because they're everywhere.
And I'm pretty sure that technology is smart enough to where that's the case. So if
You can set it that way. I just wonder, because like Chestertown's had free parking for 3 years now or something. They don't seem to have the challenges. I wonder if there's some benefit to just saying, scrap the meters altogether, instead of find a way to put a new system or enforce parking or.
Several towns on the Eastern Shore have actually gone that route. Chestertown, Town of Easton, even Annapolis has reduced the number of coin-operated parking meters and either gone away with it altogether to draw that downtown appeal. As long as that's not monopolized, as there are cases as we see on particularly Commerce Street and Lawyers Row. But there are some viable alternatives to what we currently have in place.
Yeah, I mean, Chestertown, you don't want to do this sort of apples and oranges thing.
Yeah.
But probably way more parking spots downtown than Centreville, and they don't have a downtown courthouse. We have 3 of them. So, definitely some challenges, but I like the free parking. I've never had a problem parking down there, although I know we're not probably getting the full post-COVID flavor of what downtown parking would be. And with the good signage that I know Carol and others are working on, hopefully people will be able to find our parking a little better. So thank you for that, Chief.
Thank you.
Anybody else on parking? All right, move to new business then. Purchase request for an equipment trailer. Is that Kip, Steve?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. We brought before you a memo to request the purchase of a new equipment trailer. This trailer is going to accommodate another piece of equipment that's next on the list. In the FY 2022 budget was $14,000 budgeted for this. Vendors were solicited for prices, and you have the prices before you, ranging from $25,950 to $12,195. I will tell you that these are base prices because of the volatility of the steel and component market for trailers. None of these prices would hold for more than 7 days. It's kind of like herding cats to get all the prices in time and get them to you in 7 days. So what I'm asking for, we're recommending the purchase of the PJ Trailer Low Pro from J&S Equipment for the base price of $12,195. As I said, that's the base price. So there's probably going to be a little change to it, but it would be across the board with all the vendors. So I apologize, but in this day and age we're in, that's just the way it happens to be this time.
Thank you. Is there, anybody want to make a motion?
Can I ask a question?
By all means.
Why do we do this if it's in the budget and the quote's under budget and the quotes go stale? Why do we do this? Why do we slow down the process?
Town manager, would you like to answer that question?
I hate to use this, statement, but that's kind of how the town government's been run for years, where, and it kind of was that way even when I was with the county, where something would come back, even though it was in the budget, it would go through another process of putting together all the paperwork, send it to the elected officials, and then they have an opportunity to vote on it.
So on something like this, I think generally, speaking as one council member, this does seem unnecessary, but on something bigger ticket item, because not everything in that budget that I voted for, I would necessarily support. So that does, allowing us to come back gives us a little more discretion over that budget. So that's the way I look at it.
If we could even set a dollar amount then. I guess my concern in a post-COVID reality where you can't get anything, you got container ships backed up for weeks, you have just an impossibility of getting equipment. If Kip can go somewhere and get the equipment we've already approved him to buy that costs less than $14,000, I don't know why we talk about it twice.
I agree.
Let's get him this money first.
And then not make him come do
So
this
you didn't
all
say,
the time.
I got a question. The base price is $12,195.
Mm-hmm.
So what would make the price go up?
The price of steel and the price of the
Price of
components.
So-
And I apologize, because
All right.
base price is what they told me.
Right.
It's not.
I didn't know if you were adding extra stuff on it or anything.
Yeah, that price includes the equipment
Okay.
on the trailer that we have already specified. It's
Okay.
not like we're adding options to it.
Right,
It's
okay.
just,
That's what I'm making
So
sure.
if when you got this quote, you could have enacted the purchase right away, that would be the price.
yeah, if I could have, that would have been the price that day. I'll put it this way, for that one, because even the other three prices, they couldn't even guarantee the price for a day. They said, when you come back to us and you send us the purchase order for it, they would tell us what the price is then.
How long have you had this quote?
Sorry, we didn't put that on
All
there.
right. Have you had more than 2 weeks?
Yes, it's been more than 2 weeks.
Yeah, see.
That's the other thing.
Yes.
And please don't take it the wrong way, because you folks have other business to deal with, but like when you have a reorganization meeting,
Yeah.
or in the summertime when you're not meeting but one meeting a month, that falls into
That's
play.
the point she's bringing up. Like,
Right.
in the summertime, we only meet so often, so
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to, if you have $14,000 in the budget for it and it's below that, you
I-
should be able to say,
Yeah,
I'm gonna go buy
I
it.
certainly do appreciate that.
Yes.
Speaking
Yeah.
just for me, because my knowledge base on this
No.
equipment is very low, Kip could talk to me about it 10 times, my opinion's not gonna change.
Right.
What's in the budget is allowed to be
It's
spent.
in,
I don't-
yes, I agree.
So as a point of order, if you don't mind me asking and inviting to our president, knowing that only one of these items you selected not the lowest bid, and the justification for that made sense, I was just going to suggest, just since it's in there, maybe if you highlight that and our president is okay and the rest of the council, then could we simply vote to wish you well in proceeding with things as budgeted, and then by virtue of that.
And if you're more comfortable to put a cap on it, that makes sense to me, and at least an interim basis, we see if it works. We're sitting here at 8:15 at night talking about the price of a trailer that's already in the budget.
Let's get this motion passed.
I make a motion to approve the purchase of the PJ Trailer Low Pro from J&S Equipment at the base price of, one second.
We want to, at the budgeted, not to exceed the budget.
Yeah, not to exceed the budgeted amount of $14,000.
Yep.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm sorry, who seconded that? Jeff?
I think this issue of probably deserves a little more conversation. I'm not reflexively opposed to it. The finances of the town can change, after budgeting. I think the ability for the council to look at this stuff, I think, is a good thing to protect in the abstract at least. sitting here not having thought about it at all before until right now. You want to hang around and talk about the mini excavator equipment trailer?
Certainly will. Next.
Actually, the trailer part was
We're good. Now we need the excavator to put on it.
was labeled the mini plus the trailer, but actually the trailer's already been handled.
Okay,
We should have scratched off trailer behind mini excavator.
okay.
And part of the thing is, if you looked at the approved capital budget, these two items were actually combined under one number for the budget. But because we had to purchase both of them, the new Mini wouldn't fit on the older trailers, so had to have one with the other. And again, FY '22 capital budget approved was $110,000. We solicited vendors for different brands to get a price. Prices range from $127,602 to $98,400. This piece of equipment actually replaces two pieces of equipment, one being the backhoe that we lost in a fire several months ago. It also replaces the smaller mini excavator that's getting ready to need some money spent on it if it's going to be kept in service. So I will tell you on this one, we didn't, staff's not recommending the cheapest one. Reason for that is that the cheaper one we're not as familiar with. The parts, the availability of the parts aren't the same as for the Kubota that we're requesting.
And/or service, right?
I'm sorry?
The certain warranty, have you said?
Right.
Yes.
So staff recommends the purchase of the Kubota mini excavator KXO80 at $98,797.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
I make a motion.
If I could comment, so on this one, this price is good.
This one, they're holding the price, so we are good with that.
So this one and the next one, the motion says not to exceed because they are going to hold that price.
I make a motion to approve the purchase of the Kubota KXO80-4SR3A from Burke Equipment at the price not to exceed $98,797.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. And we'll let you handle the boom mower purchase as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Once again, the capital budget, FY '22, we had budgeted $26,000 for this purchase. This one, we missed the mark on the budgeted price. The actual low price, and which we feel is a good purchase, is $29,900 above the $26,000. There is considerable difference between the prices of the machines above it. $45,000 for one, $44,577 for the other. After comparing the specs and everything, the weights and the sizes of these machines are all comparable. I can't explain why one is that much cheaper than the other. And the brand is a reputable brand as well as the other two are. So the staff's recommending the purchase of the Bush Hog Model 1865V, even though the quote is $3,900 above.
Motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the purchase of the Bush Hog 1865E from the Ag Industrial at the price not to exceed $29,900.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
First Friday discussion. I don't know who's going to start with this, but
I will. I asked that it be put on the agenda, so thank you. As you guys all know, we had the first Friday in October. A few hundred people came to Town Square to shop at the businesses here did pretty well too in our feedback after, but also at food trucks and other vendors in the square. And, moving forward, I'm committed, and I know so is Eric and Elaine Studley and the Legacy Foundation, to having this as an ongoing event, and just really want to see it be supported by the town, not financially at all, but supported by the town in concept, so that town departments can feel free to participate and engage in the event, where it's an opportunity for the police to interface with the community, for just town departments to really participate in something positive for our downtown area. So I would just really like to see the town council indicate its support and suggest to staff that it's a worthy use of their time.
Anything to add?
Just since we're talking about it, I would just add that we have taken the time to talk to all of the businesses that directly encircle the town square, with a particular emphasis on those businesses that have tenants on the second floor and above, residential tenants, just to make sure that they understand we're trying to be proactive. And if this event continues to be successful and well attended, then it could very well get to that point where I'm trying to come home at night after a long day and go to my apartment with groceries and there's nowhere to park. So we're working with our chief of police to look at parking options, and the county has parking options, just to try to stay ahead of the curve, and also to give all of these folks our contact information to say, look, if you have any concerns, if you have feedback, positive or negative, let us know so that we can jump on it. So I think we're trying to be as proactive as we can, and we did see, this was great, it was on the Centreville Day card that Carol has released through the Main Street program, so the November First Friday, so that's great. That's all I have to add.
All right, great. I am for First Fridays. I am not for town dollars being spent on it. That doesn't sound like that's what you're asking for. I mean, there is, when you start to have town staff attending things, and that does become a financial contribution from the town if town staff are committing resources to this. So I'd like to sort of get a sense if the town staff have the time and capability to lean in on this stuff, or if, having our town staff participate in this takes them away from, other things they have on their docket. That's my only question. But I mean, concept, love seeing it on the card. I like that and would support the town putting it on the calendar of events and sort of getting the word out there. I just would be concerned about sort of further pressure on already strapped staff.
No, and yeah, to be clear, to me, it would be staff that, wish to have that. So the Main Street program would be a perfect example. Economic development would be an example. And then I think the police, just because an opportunity to come where the community is, where folks from every part of our community are. I mean, it was, to me, incredible to see kids from all over Centreville running around the town square together. And I just think it would be a great opportunity to have particularly the police involved if they were able.
Sure.
And real quick, the only other thing I would add is I did take an opportunity to talk with Carolyn Brinkley about this particular event, as it is scheduled for First Friday, of course, coincides with the Christmas parade, and just asking if we can have an opportunity to huddle with her and anybody else from the town staff just to make some decisions sooner rather than later on, do we curtail what First Friday really is, and First Friday for that particular month is go to the parade. Maybe we augment it with some food trucks, since that is a complaint that we sometimes have from our citizens, is that the lines are kind of long. But that being said, just we are trying to be forward thinking, and we welcome the feedback of the rest of the council and the staff.
Thank you both for taking this on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I as well support it.
Correspondence? Any correspondence? All right, so for the new council members, we generally turn to each council member to give an update on the boards and commissions that they've been liaising with. If you haven't met or don't have anything to share, that's okay, but we'll start with Council Member Kaiser and the Maryland Municipal League.
I have nothing to report, but thank you.
Perfect. Awesome.
Very thorough.
Councilmember Johnson and the Centreville Economic Development Authority.
I know everybody has been on their email and got my memo dated today's date. I'm not going to read it, but what I want to just draw your attention to, I did print it for those of us here. And this is just regarding CETA re-energization. That's what I'm going to call it. I won't read the memo, you have it, but basically the crux of this is just to say that I have reread, I should have written, the Centreville Economic Development Plan, the Main Street Market Study, to kind of immerse myself in that. And then when I looked at the town's website, you see on this memo, items 1 through 14, this is what's currently listed as our economic development thrust. So I am meeting, as it further states in this memo, with Paige Tillman on Monday. For those listening in at home, that's our part-time economic development director. So we'll be meeting to share ideas. And what I would like to ask of her is to take a look at this, and from the vantage point of the staff person that's assigned with that, and we'll invite Carol to weigh in as well, which of these are things that are still appropriate, current? Are there things that we really should strike out or explain better, that kind of thing? And then work with the CETA members that we have, do some recruitment. We have some folks from Symphony Village that have expressed interest, so we do have at least 2 vacancies in the group. So look towards something maybe toward the end of this year, beginning of next year, to kind of bring that group back together to specifically look at these. And then what I would like to recommend to this group is to create measurable objectives, milestones, something specific to each of these items so that we know kind of what we're doing to go after that. To be, what does success look like for each of these items? And even if it's just that these are sort of not real specific things in terms of the ability to quantify them, just what are we doing in any regard to make them happen? So more to come, but I did want to just draw your attention to that.
Thank you. Vice President Keel on the Council of Governments.
I unfortunately didn't make it. I was under the weather, but Carolyn was there.
I still get my 20 cents for going for
Now I owe
it.
you 40 cents.
Oh, 40 cents.
Last time.
No, we had, so the town of Sothersville hosted this month's COG meeting, and we had Dr. Ciatola in to give an update on the current numbers for COVID. I actually have the document or the presentation that he handed out, and my intention was to scan and email it to the council. I have not done that yet, so I will send it out to you. So really interesting information, and nothing else super noteworthy from the meeting. Next month's meeting, which is November 10th, it will be held in Queen Anne at their new town hall. So you all get the invite, but you all are welcome. Jeff is the liaison, but any council member is welcome to attend. So.
And I just have to comment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Carolyn and I have been at a COG meeting together. I was there in a different capacity. But if you have not had the opportunity to go, I think that they're informative and also entertaining.
Oh,
Some
they
of the
are.
unfiltered
Yes.
comments from our council members to the north, and that is not a disparaging comment because I really enjoy it, but it's worth going. I'll just leave it at that.
Especially entertaining come tax differential time.
Yes.
Yes, I liaise with the Planning Commission, which has not met since our swearing-in meeting, so I don't have an update from the Planning Commission other than to say that they continue to work on any number of proposals and also the update of the town's comprehensive plan. We'll move now to reports of department heads. We'll start with Town Manager.
Yes, been working with the 2 new council members on a transition. We did have a transition meeting recently. It was a 4-hour afternoon session with all the department heads, town attorney, and the 2 new council members. And they continue to, talk on the phone or come in to meet to, get some additional information to try to bring them up to speed as many different things that's happened in the past in the town as well as what's coming up in the future. So that's going to be an ongoing thing. Looking forward to that. We do have next week. We had advertised for part-time code enforcement. So we do have some applicants coming in for some interviews next week. So hopefully in the very near future we'll have somebody on board.
Excellent news. Chief of Police.
It's getting late, but I never want to miss the opportunity to brag about the fine job that our members of our department do. So within your package, you'll find the August and September overviews. You'll receive these each month, which kind of gives you a snapshot of the activity and different types of incidents that we've investigated or responded to, as well as special assignments and trainings, as well as a year-to-date comparison with the previous month. If you ever have any questions about what you see, please don't hesitate to ask or reach out with a follow-up. One point of interest on, just for the record, on the calls for service totals by month under item 61, which is sex offenses, that's showing 3. For some reason, a parade that we attended was coded as a sex offense. So we have since corrected that, so that it should be accurate in the next report. During the last several months, officers from the Centreville Police Department have attended the following specialized training to enhance police department operations. Very, very big on professionalism and training and being sure that we not only meet the expectations of the Maryland Police Training Commission, but we exceed those expectations. Much of the training that we attend is free of charge, so we don't incur any cost to the town or to the police department budget. One officer attended the field training officer program, which helps to certify, that's a seasoned officer that helps to certify newly trained police officers. We're hoping to have a total of 3 by the end of the year. 6-hour handguns is our primary sidearm. The department had 1 6-hour armorer. We have since sent 2 additional officers to 6-hour armorer school, and we recently conducted a inspection of all of our firearms to ensure that everything is working properly, that we don't have any cracks or fractures or anything, so that all of our department issued firearms are functioning correctly. One officer is going to attend firearms instructor school. Currently there are 2, myself and 1 other officer. This will bring us a 3rd now firearms instructor to the department. And 1 officer is in the final stages to successfully complete TASER, which is our electronic control weapon instructor. Again, we only had 1, and it's all the same guy, ironically, that had these certifications, and now we've since fixed that. All full-duty CPD officers have successfully completed the annual mandated training through the Maryland Police Training Commission to include classroom defense tactics and law updates. It's expected that all officers will successfully complete annual firearms range qualifications by the end of this month. We've also completed our TASER and our mandatory defense tactics training certifications. Voluntary training that was completed by our officers. Some of it included DHS insider threat training, human trafficking, recognizing and responding to domestic violence incidents, airborne and bloodborne pathogens training, interacting with mentally ill persons as first responders, response to excited delirium calls for service, and active shooter preparation and response for schools. That is above and beyond what the mandate is, so I'm very proud of these guys for taking care of these trainings. The request and vehicle justification forms for the previously discussed and Humvee has been submitted to the Maryland State Police LISO 1033 program coordinator, and there are no anticipated issues with the request, and the vehicle is expected to be transferred at the conclusion of their, they have an ongoing audit. So once they wrap up their audit, then they open things back up for transfers. And then on, and you may pass these down, on September 8th, if you could pass it down for me, please. On September 8th, Sergeant Larimore and his faithful companion, Canine Crush, assisted the Maryland State Police with a traffic stop just outside of Centreville. Canine Crush actually alerted on the exterior of a, it was a RV type camper. Canine Crush alerted on the exterior and 3 locations of the interior. A search was conducted, and as you see by the photographs, a large sum of crystal methamphetamine was located, along with approximately $7,000 in U.S. currency, 2 firearms, which a .357 and an AR-15 assault rifle, with approximately 1,000 rounds of ammunition. I commend these officers. Over the last year, we have faced many, many challenges at our department, from staffing to COVID and beyond. And I support and fully recognize their efforts during these challenging times and the great work that they continue to do for this town day in and day out. And we're grateful for the support of the council.
All set?
And that is all I have.
Thank you. Nice work. Thanks.
Amen.
Director of Public Works?
I won't take long, I promise. Just that we had two very pleasant surprises this week. One, we got a call and the lights that were ordered for Lawyers Row came in.
What?
So ahead of schedule and a surprise. I can't commit to a date yet when we'll have them installed, but hopefully by the Christmas parade.
Or before.
Before the Christmas parade, I'm sorry.
Those trees, they're itching to get up, those
Yes.
trees.
So, yes, we have to. Another surprise was one of the generators that were ordered back in April came in when we were told they wouldn't be here till sometime next month. But on the other hand, the other one now won't be here till December. So, but we're making good effort. So.
How's Whedon Street going?
Whedon Street's going very well. There's a few hiccups here and there, but nothing major, and it's coming along very well. Compaction tests are coming out good on it. They're working on the sewer line, maybe to the point, I don't know that they'll have it done tomorrow because they only work half a day. I think they've got a meeting tomorrow afternoon that they have to attend, but they're going very well.
They'll plan on paving it before the winter?
Yes, that's the whole plan, is to have the concrete poured for the curb and gutter and have it paved before the plant shuts down for winter.
Excellent. Thank you, Kip.
Yep, thank you.
Town Attorney?
I have nothing to report.
Town Clerk?
Just real quick, we're still working on the parade. Our applications are slowly coming in, but we don't usually get the bulk of them until days after the application ends that they're supposed to be in.
Don't run it like the last minute.
That's right. So hopefully they're slowly trickling in. And the other thing is that I will be working on, I just got a reminder today, so the town has a sustainable community plan that we do, and it was all part of, we were required to have that one in order to apply and be designated as a main street. We have to have the designation in order to apply for any of the community legacy grants, which are the facade grants that we do. So our renewal is coming up in February. So I got that reminder today, so I'll be working on that application to get in so we can continue. And then just to remind everybody that Saturday is Centreville Day. And it's, look at Jeff's face. So 11 to 3 Saturday, Town Square, and kudos to Carol and all her volunteers, and because it is a big event. Our 10th anniversary. Centreville Day 10 years ago was my first event, but we had it in the summer then, and at the wharf, not in the middle of town. So, yeah, where it was muddy and raining. Well, it had rained, but it was just a big mud mess. So that's all I have.
Good flag on Centreville Day. Opening remarks brought to you by Vice President Jeff Keel. So come out for that and stay for the event. We'll have another citizens forum. Any citizens wanting to share their thoughts? If not, the last thing we'll do here is council roundtable for new folks that haven't been before. This is an opportunity for council members to briefly share what they have on their mind relevant to the town. So we'll start with Ashley.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all the department heads and town staff, and Steve particularly, that have been so helpful in the transition. And when Carolyn handed me a binder that was like this thick, that was a little terrifying, but everybody's been super helpful, and so I'm just very grateful and appreciative.
Councilmember Johnson?
What she said. So everybody has been wonderful, so it's been awesome so far.
Vice President Keel?
I have nothing this evening.
All right. I'll wrap up just by saying yesterday I had coffee with Grayson Middleton, who is Governor Hogan's Eastern Shore representative here in town. He's actually from Sparks Mill Road, so he's a Shore guy. Nice. And talked about how, the governor and his team at Secretary Grumbles at MDE, helping us get a sense of, what we might be able to depend on in terms of grant funding for sewer treatment plant expansion. So, had a very frank conversation with Grayson about how big of an issue this is going to be for the town moving forward. And one of the biggest questions is how much is it going to cost? One of my biggest questions when I think about that is how much is the state going to pay for? So having that question answered, I think will be, or at least having some certainty about what we might be able to expect there, in my opinion, will be helpful. So we may have the governor's team on our side, at least for the next 16 months or so while he's still around. So that is all I've got. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Seconded.